Hi guys, this is Simon with Trade and Perform Coaching doing the trade review for Thursday, the 22nd of May. So almost Memorial Day weekend. I am totally ready for it. Let's go over the trading in the morning. So before I start, I want to remind everyone what my objective is when I'm trading. I want to find the trade location that's going to offer me the highest odds trade, right? With the meaning that I am looking for really a 70% or more consistency in my trade entries, okay? But also, not only am I looking for a high consistency on my entries, but I'm looking for a high consistency on my exits and the ability to reduce risk as quickly as possible, pull stops up to break even, and then see if the market will simply reward me for being patient and waiting for a good trade location. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But what that creates for me is an environment where I can get consistently strong wins. Now, coming into the trade day yesterday in the market preview, which is posted in the video right below here, okay, you can see that what I had identified as the first place on the upside where I would take a short was right up here in initial resistance. And I said I would either take the very front of the zone or towards the very back of the zone. We didn't quite reach the very tippy back of the zone, but we got pretty darn close, okay? This actually, the first time in, ended up providing a beautiful 2-point rotation from the middle to the middle of the zone. I don't know now. Understand the concept behind the zone is that once you start getting a consistent win record, right? I have a bag of about somewhere between 3 and 5 trades that I can execute every day. All of them with varying rates of success in terms of their percentages, but all of them very high percentage trades. So that means two things. First of all, I throw out trades that are less than 70% winners on a it kind of goes on a rotating basis, but the zones have been consistently very high win rates for me for a very, very long time. Okay, so I'm throwing out everything that doesn't meet that high win odds, that high odds win, which means that there's a lot of trades that I'll look at and I'll go, that sure does look good, right? But then when I look at my spreadsheet, either I haven't done the research on it and it doesn't qualify, or it is a winning trade, but it's not a high enough winning trade, right? Because what I'm trying to do is two things outside of make money, right? I'm also trying to conserve my emotional capital while I'm trading. I'm trying to reduce anxiety while trading by having preset structure, both on the entries, my exits, and my stops, right? Which lets me completely dive into focusing on the price action and what the market's communicating to me, right? And then I don't become overly concerned or overly worried about any one particular trade. So, if you will notice here, actually, I was in a coaching session when we hit this, and I had to pause and step away and say goodbye to my wife. And I actually, this trade location here, even though I called it ahead of time, I didn't get my fill. By the time I got back, we were already back down at 93. And I tried to limit in at 93, and they just didn't fill me. So that kind of was unfortunate. However, the location itself, as I said beforehand, this would be a place I would take the trade first time in. I wish I hadn't stepped away. I did. And it ended up costing me a 2-point trade. However, several of my coaching clients did get this trade yesterday afternoon, and it was pre-set up before we ever got here. I said, first time into the zone, right? I'm looking to take a trade. So sure enough, it yielded the reward and did everything I wanted it to do. It gave me great trade location, relatively little heat, right? But let's pretend for a second, because nothing else did. This was a valid zone, but we opened up in the zone, right? And there was no rotation down. So it didn't give me any kind of cushion into this zone. Therefore, I did not take this. Also, because we're having such lackluster pre-markets, normally these Globex highs and lows will usually align with the trade location that I'm trying to attain, and that sets up a different trade for me. But that's not going on right now. So Globex high and Globex low are a little bit more difficult for me to trade right now, and that may just be for a season. Remember, I excel at fast markets, and I don't want to say struggle is the wrong word, but my P&L advances at a slower rate in slow markets, which I guess makes sense, but it also costs me more emotional capital because I'm more uncomfortable in slow markets. I lose some of my advantages. The advantages of having a fast market versus a slow market, by the way, and I'll cover this, right? We have speed. Speed causes other traders to make errors, right? And because of the velocity, it also dislocates price. So when I get price dislocation into a key area, right, that increases my odds. It also means I have to wait far less time in general to get price rejection, and makes it much easier for me to take my risk off, right? Because I'll have an increased volatility, will increase the bands, and let me get that 2 points off. Let me move my stops to break even, and then I can move on with the day. Now I want to point one other thing out. This is the type of action you'll get a lot in a slow market, right? But even if we had entered the trade here, let's say you'd entered this 93 and 3/4, this eventually, right, pushed right to the back of the zone, which I said was another good trade location, right? Look how long it took to come out of this zone. This is one of the reasons, okay, in most circumstances, 25 minutes is the most I'll allow in a trade zone, but in summertime it slows down, and so I'll have a lot of circumstances during the summer where I'll enter a trade, that 25-minute clock will tick, I'll move my stops down to the swing high or a point behind the swing high, and then I'll end up just getting tagged out or stopped break even on the trade. That's not a big deal for me, because you got to remember the other part. The mentality of every trade has to work for you is the mentality of usually a small trader, or even I would say someone who demands winning on each and every trade, right? But if instead you're looking at a scale of trades running across a broad spectrum, we'll add, by the way, this morning that trade up at the zone, which I called prior to the open yesterday, right? If you look across a broad spectrum, right, going all the way back to the first, these are all trades that I either pointed out pre-market and I said I will take this trade here, or there are trades that I called out in real time on StockTwits. Either way, both of those you can document and go back and look and see what happened. First of all, you can see they're not all winners, number one. Secondly, you can see there's not necessarily a ton of trades every day. As a matter of fact, there's some periods of time, like when we got right in this area right here. Okay, this is all, these are all Fed days right here. Fed day, non-farm payroll day. Okay, all of those days diminish my odds. But you can see I don't even need those days to have a good month. You can see right now we're sitting at, well, once we add the 2 from yesterday, we're sitting at 19 points for the month with a week to go. Now, usually a good month will be closer to 40 points, maybe even 50. But even if we just kind of keep struggling and chugging along until we get up to maybe even 30 points. Well, think about it. If we finish at 30 points for the month, heck, even if we just finish at 19 points for the month, that's $1,000 a contract, right? And look, there hasn't been that many trades, right? There's been some days where we've had no trades at all. But even if you're just trading 2 or 3 contracts, my gosh, and you're not leaving any trailers. That's the other thing I want to point out with the methodology, right? Even if you're not leaving any trailers, these trailers, I believe I added them up yesterday, right now add up to a potential of 54 potential points versus the 17 I've actually acquired, okay? So once you get your trade size up and you can leave trailers off for bigger moves, right? Even if you just captured 1/3 of the remaining 30 points, right? That adds an additional 10 points to your month. It bumps you up to 30 points. That's getting you close to $1,500 a contract. And like I said, we still have another week to go, and we've been riddled with Fed days and holidays this particular month. So I guess what I'm trying to communicate is the consistency is everything. You don't have to capture a million trades. 1 or 2 trades is all you need. That's all that goes back to. So point being, I called this location prior to the open. I have sidestepped through all of this. There was nothing much for me to do in here. We were getting very small rotations. We finally got a beautiful stretch up into a key location area, right? This was an algo fire. If you go look, you'll see it just ripped through here up and down really quick. We got our 2-point rotation. You had 2 choices at that point. You could take your risk off completely, which, given the environment, I would have done that. Or you could have moved your stop either right to the back of the zone, swing high, or you left it at the original 2 points. Those are your choices, really. And then if you had done that, right, you had a potential, if you could have handled the swing back up, of it rotating back. Again, this assumes even from the front of the zone, right, the 92 1/4, if that's the best. That's the best you could have done in terms of your entry, right? 92 1/4 still gave you a rotation down to 90. It was, again, barely 2 points, but it did get you down there. And by the way, I do want to make a clarification here. In order to get your 2 points, you had to take it from the middle to the back. And I do believe, if you'll go back and look in the video, I did emphasize that you wanted to get this as close to the back as you possibly could for safety purposes. But even if you took the front, right, look how long it took. You may have you got close to your 8 ticks, right? But you certainly had literally an hour to pull something out of this trade, even if you couldn't wait for it to give you your first 2 points from the front. And again, hopefully people heard what I said and pushed a little bit further back into the zone when they took the trade. That is specifically in reference to my coaching clients. Hopefully y'all chose that trading location. And the rest of the day was boring. I do want to cover one thing. I did take a trade at the end of the day, and I want to show that to y'all. Okay, and this is an example of bad trading that I did, and so what I notice is on StockTwit world and internet world, everyone's perfect. No one makes any trading mistakes. Well, I make trading mistakes. Part of the reason I'm a good coach is because I have committed every egregious trading error you can commit, okay, and still blow up in an attempt to blow up an account. Okay, I've made every mental error, I've made every strategic error, I've made every sizing error. You name it, I've done everything you can to hamper my progress over the past 2 decades, right? And I still make trading errors from time to time. I was tired yesterday. I was up late, up early, and towards the end of the day, and I was getting frustrated emotionally with this price action. Okay, and I have a way of working on that in my journaling. Okay, so what I simply said to myself was, and I wrote this down, I sure am pissed at this price action. I hate this stuff. Gives you no trading opportunities because there's no decent counter rotations. Look, this is NQ, and we're whipping back in a 5-point range. We were just trading in 10 and 15-point ranges in these same bars. We've gone from this to this in the same 5-minute time frame. Okay, this makes it very hard to make money. So yesterday afternoon, I saw that we were very extended, right? Look at it over a course of 2 days on NQ. Didn't mean to do that. And again, my primary focus for this for the blog, and okay, let's see if we can pull this in here a little bit. My primary focus is on ES. However, if we look at this, you can see, look at the stretch here. This is 35, essentially 80, all the way up to 36.60. So 80 points of NQ move. That's a lot, okay? And we finally got down to this point where we were about to, we traded sideways. We were unable to make a push at the end of the day. They finally made a push where it looked like they were going to break to new highs. Again, most of the time the market's in balance at the end of the day. And I looked at the price action, and then I saw that 1 5-minute bar rip down, and that's usually a sign in many markets, right, where you're about to get a roll to the downside. We had a similar price action take place around 10 a.m. on, if you look at this on, what was this, Wednesday, okay, right before we got a move to the downside. The difference being is this trade here, although I'm not going to go through the parameters, set up a trap trade, and this one here did not set up a trap trade. That being said, I looked at the trade, I recognized the price action and the price pattern, and I said, I'm taking a short to the downside. I posted that. But then as soon as I took that trade, I realized I was off plan. What does that create? So now I have insecurity. I'm like, crap. First of all, I don't trade in the last hour, very rarely trade in the last hour. Okay, it has to be an incredibly good setup. The second part of that was that now I was uncertain. You know, we're trading near the highs of the day. We've been trending up, and I'm the one that's going to call a top on this thing. That's creating some insecurity, right? And so I have questions floating in my head. Now I'm not like, this is my trade. I have my statistics. I'm working off my spreadsheet. I know this is good. This is, I think I recognize the price action. Man, I'm tired. I've been up for a long time, and it's the end of the day. I've been coaching several clients, and I'm frustrated because the price action is going straight up. I didn't catch very much of the rip up because it just didn't give me the setups I needed to get long, which is a little frustrating. And so I look at all that and I go, okay, well, here's where I decide I'm going to take my trade. So look at all the instability around that trading decision. So as soon as I make a trading error, I have 2 ways of handling it. I can close it right away, okay, which I probably would have chosen under better circumstances to be my A choice. Or B, right, I can simply leave the stop there, say I've made that decision, and I'm not going to take another trade afterwards. Now let me tell you, I talk to traders who are impulsive traders all the time, and they can't handle this. What happens is you make one bad decision and it launches into a series of bad decisions. I've had that problem before in the past as well, and so what I make a decision, what happens at that point is I simply have to make a executive decision and say I'm either closing the position, I'm leaving the risk on, and I accept the consequences. But either way, because I've made a poor trading choice, I'm not pulling the trigger again for at least another hour. And that saves my bacon so many times I can't even tell you. So the story behind that, at any rate, I decided to simply not do anything. I left my stop where it was originally, which was a point behind the swing high, and I would really consider that I got lucky at the end of the day. Did I read the price action good? Yeah, well, I've been doing this for 20 years. I should be able to read the price action well. But the trade was off plan, and then more importantly today, I need to be diligent that I don't start falling into a pattern of looking for random reward in my trades, which means I have to be more diligent and go back even more so to my structure than I normally would. So anyway, I hope that helped a few guys. The objective here, again, is to help you all become better traders through both the market previews and through the trade reviews, along with the one-on-one coaching. I'm not a perfect trader. I'm not the best trader in the world by miles and miles and miles, but I have figured out how to take my basic trade setups, right, and incorporate them so I get the highest odds. These are not all my trades, but this is just simply focusing first time into the zones. That's all this focuses on. First time into the zones, and all but I think 2 of these trades are all prior to 11 a.m., if I have that correct, right? And I'll add, of course, I'll throw one more on the Barbie here and get a total for a total of 19 points, right? That's all I'm trying to focus on in that spreadsheet. And what the point of that spreadsheet is to show, right, these are not my exact trades. Okay, I want to be clear with that. These are not my exact trades. I don't always take the entire trade off at 2. I do leave trailers so I can capture more of this potentiality to the upside. Okay, but when a trader is starting off, or if I were restricted and simply said I can only get in and then take 2 points off a trade, right? This is what my P&L would mirror pretty close to exactly, right? I do leave the trailers, so I actually have a higher P&L over here, and then occasionally it would actually be lower because some of my trailers that I leave on would come back and get tagged back out. But I'm pretty good at telling when to leave trailers and when not to leave trailers, and that comes with time and experience and working the spreadsheet, which I have more complex spreadsheets than this that I'm not going to post, okay? So I'm trying to make this an accurate reflection of if you simply took the trade, took your 2 points, and moved on with the next day. And if you did that, right, you're floating it right at 19 points for the month. That's just under $1,000 a contract. And what that also gives me the ability to do is, as long as I stay consistent like this, right, in terms of first time into the zone, 2 points over, as my P&L builds, I can start adding contracts in a very structured, business-like way, meaning we have a formula, we have certain metrics that have to be met to increase trade, but then when I go to my next series of trades, instead of having to worry about draw down my original capital, I'm now trading against the equity of the prior series that was generated by all of these trades, okay? And so now if I start off with trading 2 contracts, or if I start off trading 20 contracts, right, now I can go from 2 contracts to 3 contracts, or I can go from 20 contracts to 30 contracts, but either way, the P&L that I'll be trading against in the next series is the one that's generated from the P&L in the first series. And if I don't do everything correctly in that series of trades, I've got to start over until I achieve perfection and execution of my trade plan. Now, I want to leave one last piece. It doesn't mean that I can't add other trades like yesterday afternoon. If I wanted to add that trade setup, last hour, NQ trade, that particular structure, and I wanted to add it to my trade program, that's fine. I can do that because I can lay out all the parameters up front in my trading, and then once I've accomplished that, then I can turn back around and go, okay, now I don't have to sweat it. I have my structure, I have my statistics backing me, and I can see over a series of time that this is actually indeed a winner for me over 70% of the time when I see it, as opposed to, and that's my own internal number, most people will say you can't attain 70%. I argue differently, right? And that's opposed to, man, I'm tired. Wow, look at that trade setup. It sure looks like we're going to roll over. I'll take it, right? And for how many of us out there have we done that and gone, I just threw away a great day, or I've just destroyed my P&L at the end of the day. Anyways, I will talk to y'all later. I hope this was helpful. Everyone, by the way, I'm going to open the room this morning to everyone to come in and do the market preview with me. So everyone's welcome to join, and I will at 7:45 Central Time. I will post the link here shortly. Have a great day. Thank you, guys.